So we're going to have a go at playing some natural harmonics, which are the nice sort of chimey bell type sounds that you might have been playing on the series introduction. We're going to start practicing at the 12th fret. I'll explain why at the end of the video, but for now that's where we're going to start practicing. So if you're curious to know why I've decided to do that, stay tuned till the end, but I want to try and get down into the playing as soon as possible. Also, we're going to start learning on the high E string, on the first string, the thin string. The reason for that is because it'll make it easier for you to know if you're getting the right technique or not, because it's easier to know if you're playing it wrong on that string, because it'll be harder. So we'll start with something that's going to give us a good indication of whether we're doing it wrong or not. So technique wise, our picking hand, there's no technique special on our picking hand. I'm using a plectrum at the minute. You can achieve the same results using your thumb to pick or finger picking, it makes no difference. I'm using a plectrum because typically that's how I normally play an electric guitar. So don't worry too much about that. All of the technique is in our fretting hand for this particular, to play these harmonics. Now, there's two technique elements. One is the position of our finger up and down the string, and the second one is the actual weight that we put on the string of our finger. Now when we're playing a normal fretted note, so if I want to play, say we're going to play the 12th fret on our E string, if I was just to play that normal note, so when I'm teaching, I say to students, when you're fretting a note, play it only as hard as what you need to do. You're not in the gym, you're not trying to push the note through the neck. So it just wants to be held down hard enough for the note to sound. You'll know yourself if you've practiced. If you're not holding it down enough, you'll get a fluffy little sound. For now, that technique goes out the window. We're not pushing the string down all the way down to the fretboard. So the string's never going to touch the fret or the fretboard for this technique. It's going to be in mid-air. So in terms of string pressure, the best way I can explain it is we're just going to lightly touch the string with the pad of our finger. The same place we'd use to fret the note, but we're just going to touch the string lightly. So rather than pressing it down on the fret, we're just going to literally start off with as light as you can possibly touch the string and then pluck it. And that's how to generate the chiming sound. Now, in terms of touching the string and why I've started on this E string, what you will find is I've talked about something called muting strings before and damping strings. If I'm too heavy and I'm putting too much pressure on that string, I'll be able to get the harmonic, but because my finger's still touching it, it'll mute the string out and the note will die earlier. I've got the technique right, I'm playing the harmonic, but because I've still got some pressure on the string, I'm not fretting it, I'm not touching the guitar, I'm not touching the fretboard or the fret, but obviously the string is muting on my finger, so it's not ringing out nicely like I played at the start. So the way to avoid that is to play the harmonic very lightly with your finger and then remove the pressure completely. So as if you stop fretting the note, so, and then it'll ring out. And it rings out a lot longer. So that's the reason why I've started as learning on this thin E string. The thinner the string, the more problems you're going to have with it ringing out if you don't get your finger out of the way. On the thick string, I'll just show you. I can leave my finger on it. The string's heavier, it's got more mass to it. I'm getting the chime, and it's still ringing out a little bit. So it might be more difficult for you to know whether you've got the correct technique. That's not the particularly good technique by leaving my finger on. By example, I'll play exactly the same as what I just played, but take my finger off. And that rings out forever and a day. So that's an important aspect if you want these things to ring out. If you don't want them to ring out, you can always stop it and mute it afterwards, but then you're in control. So you're in control of your technique. That's exactly the same for whichever string you're trying to play it on. Now the second little technique factor for your fretting on that I mentioned was your position up and down the neck. If you don't get it in quite the right place, then the harmonic's not going to sound very well, or maybe not even sound at all. So I'm going to use the correct pressure technique, and I'm just going to move my finger around so you can hear what it's going to sound like if you're not in the right spot on the string. So that sounds okay. If I go up slightly, I'm just getting a muted string, I'm no harmonic. Back to the sweet spot. If I go down slightly, no harmonic. So I want to be in that sweet spot. It should be directly above the metal fret on your guitar, if your guitar's set up right. So the pressure, literally just touching it. Good example I can use. Imagine your mate gives you a challenge, or just touch this, tell me if it's hot. Right? So you don't want to burn your finger and leave a blister on your finger. You're gonna just touch, just, and then totally out the way. You don't have to exaggerate like me and you know, doing an angel pause. I'm just showing you that I can play the harmonic, and then my hands are out the way to allow it to keep ringing. So the pressure, the touch, and also where you are up and down the string, that's exactly the same for playing it across all 6 strings. So as I say, start with your first string, your E string, your high E, and practice across the others. And then you've got some lovely sort of chimey notes to be going with. I said at the start, we're going to start at the 12th fret to practice with, because it's the easiest place to practice. The reason for that is the 12th fret is a special fret on a guitar. I've just done a video on that. I'll put a link to it. That's explained separately, so I'm not going to cover it again. But it's really easy to get those harmonics at the 12th fret. Not the only place you can get them. You can get them in other places on the guitar. Another couple of common places you can get them are the 7th fret and the 5th fret. So just by means of example, my 7th fret. It's exactly the same technique. I'm making sure that my pressure is what it should be, just a slight touch and release. And I'm making sure that my finger's in the right position in terms of up and down the string. Same for the 5th fret. Exactly the same technique. So those are natural harmonics. They work on electric guitar, same as they work on acoustic guitar. They'll work just as well on acoustic guitar, and it doesn't matter if you've got a clean sound like I do have now, or a distorted sound like I sometimes use on the electric guitar. It all works the same. These are probably the easiest ones to get started with in terms of the harmonics. So it will take a little bit of practice, a little bit of feel if you've never done them before. As with anything, it's going to take you a little bit of time. You won't, probably the biggest challenge will be just getting that little touch right without killing the string completely. But you can tell that nice chiming sound if you're getting somewhere, if you're getting the technique right. So have a good practice at these because they're fun, and they're a great thing to play. Enjoy.